Evie the Mist Fairy. Evie the Mist Fairy is lost in the fog without her magic mist feather. Can a sparkly trail of fairy dust lead Rachel, Kirsty, and the frightened fairy out of the shadowy forest? There's a magic feather in each Rainbow Magic story. Help the girls to collect them all and restore the weather to fairyland. Number 12. Thanks to real fairies everywhere. Special thanks to Sue Bentley. Evie the Mist Fairy. There's the map. Goblins green and goblins small. I cast a spell to make you tall. As high as the palace you shall grow. My icy magic makes it so. And steal Doodle's magic feathers, used by fairies to make all weathers. Climate chaos I have planned on Earth and here in Fairyland. Misty morning. A misty morning. Wake up, sleepyhead, cried Kirsty Tate to her friend Rachel as she jumped out of bed and started to dress. Rachel Walker was asleep in the spare bed in Kirsty's room. She was staying with Kirsty and her parents in the village of Weatherby. Sleepy, she rolled over and opened her eyes. I was dreaming that we were back in Fairyland, she told Kirsty. The weather was topsy-turvy, sunny and snowy, all at the same time, and Doodle was trying to sort it out. Doodle, the fairy's magic weather cockle, had been in Rachel's mind a lot lately because she and Kirsty were on an important mission. Each day in Fairyland, with the help of the weather fairies, Doodle used his magic tail feather to organize the weather. Each of the 7 magic feathers controlled a different kind of weather, and each of the 7 weather fairies are responsible for working with one feather in particular. The system worked perfectly until mean old Jack Frost sent 7 goblins to steal Doodle's magic feathers. The goblins ran off into the human world with 1 feather each, and when poor Doodle followed them out of Fairyland, he found himself transformed into a rusty metal weathervane. The Queen of the Fairies had asked Rachel and Kirsty to help find the magic feathers and return them to Doodle. Meanwhile, Fairyland's weather was all mixed up, and the goblins had been using the feathers to cause weather chaos in the human world too. Poor Doodle, Kirsty said, looking out of the window at the old barn where the cockerel was perched. Her dad had found Doodle lying in the park and thinking he was an ordinary weathervane. Mr. Tate had brought him home and put him on the barn roof. Hopefully we'll find another magic feather today, Kirsty continued. We've already found 4 of the stolen feathers. We just need to find the other 3, and then Doodle will get his magic back. Yes, Rachel agreed, brightening at the thought. But I have to go home in 3 days, so we don't have long. As she gazed out of the blue sky, a wisp of silvery mist caught her eye. "Look, that cloud is shaped just like a feather," she said. Kirsty looked where Rachel was pointing. "I can't see anything." Rachel looked again. The wisp shape had vanished. "Perhaps I imagined it," she sighed, turning away to dress. The memory of the dream fizzed in her tummy like lemonade bubbles. It felt like a magical start to the day. She loved staying with Kirsty and sharing fairy adventures with her. The girls met whilst on holiday on Rainbow Island with their parents. That was when they had first helped the fairies. On that occasion, Jack Frost cast a nasty spell to banish the rainbow fairies from fairyland, and the girls had helped 7 of them get safely home. Rachel and Kirsty hurried down to the kitchen. Mr. Tate was sitting at the table. He looked up and smiled at the girls. "Did you sleep well?" "Yes, thanks," Rachel replied as she sat down. She saw a bright green notice on the kitchen table. It read, "Grand Fun Run at Greenwood Forest, Weatherby. Everyone welcome." She looked at the date. "That's today." "Yes, Mum's running in it," said Kirsty. "Most of the village is taking part. Why don't you two go and watch?" suggested Mr. Tate. "You could give Mum some support." "Okay," Rachel and Kirsty agreed happily. "Maybe we could look for the goblins on the way," thought Rachel. She felt excited and a bit nervous. Goblins were nasty, tricky things, and Jack Frost had cast a spell to make them bigger than normal. Thankfully, fairy law states that nothing can be taller than the King and Queen's fairy castle, so the goblins couldn't get too big. But they still stood nearly as high as Rachel and Kirsty's shoulders. Mr. Tate finished his cup of tea and stood up. "I'm going to pick up Gran and take her to watch the fun run. We might see you there," he told the girls. "Okay, Dad. Goodbye," said Kirsty said with a wave. Just then, Mrs. Tate dashed into the kitchen, wearing her jogging kit of shorts, t-shirt and trainers. She smiled at Kirsty and Rachel. "Sorry, I can't stop. Girls, I promise to help mark out the course in the forest." "That's all right, Mum. We'll follow you there," Kirsty said. We're coming to cheer you on," Rachel explained. "See you at the woods, then," Mrs. Tate called cheerfully as she disappeared out of the door. A little later, Kirsty and Rachel set out for the Greenwood Forest themselves. "Let's take the river path," Kirsty suggested. "It's a bit longer, but it's much prettier." "Oh, yes, we might see some ducklings," Rachel agreed eagerly. As the girls walked up Twisty Lane, sunlight poured through the dancing tree branches and sports of light speckled the road like golden coins. Soon they reached the river. It was very pretty down by the water, where cheerful buttercups dotted the grass and crowns gazed happily. Rachel spotted little puffs of mist rising from the water. "Look, do you think this could be fairy mist?" she asked. "I'm not sure," Kirsty replied. They're There's often mist around the water, isn't there? Oh, yes, especially in the morning and the evening, Rachel remembered. She felt a little disappointed, but brightened when she saw two swans gliding past, followed by three young cygnets. Dragonflies with gossamer wings perched in the reeds beside the sparkling river. It's a perfect day, she remarked. Kirsty nodded. Just ahead, she could see the start of the forest. Something was shimmering on a branch of one of the near trees. It looked like a ragged silver grey shawl glimmering softly in the light. What's that? She asked Rachel. Rachel went over to have a look. I don't know, but it's lovely, she replied. Just like angel hair for decorating trees at Christmas. There's lots more of it on the other branches. Isn't it pretty? Kirsty touched a strand of the strange silvery stuff. It clung to her fingers for a moment before melting away. It feels cold, Kirsty shivered, rubbing her hands together. Rachel leaned forward for a closer look. Tiny silvery lights shimmered among the fine silky threads. I'm sure this is fairy mist, she whispered excitedly. Kirsty's eyes lit up. I think you're right, she agreed. She looked toward a clump of tall oak trees. A wispy cloud of the strange sparkling mist was building in the sky and floating gently down towards the trees. More fairy mist, Kirsty pointed out. Come on. We're on chapter 2, Magic in the Mist. The girls ran towards a stile that led into the woods. They were out of breath by the time they jumped down on the forest path and looked around. Wispy silver mist clung to the trees everywhere and coated the grass with tiny droplets. Every twig, leaf, and flower glowed and shimmered with soft silver light. And where the sunbeams reached down through the trees, the fairy mist sparkled with rainbow light. Oh, breathed Rachel. It's so beautiful. Kirsty stared open-mouthed at the forest. It looked almost as magical as fairyland itself. Slowly, the girls moved forward. After a few steps, Rachel realized that she couldn't see very far ahead. This mist is building up fast, she said. The goblin with the mist feather must be hiding really nearby, Kirsty nodded, as thick fog swirled around them. You're right, Rachel, she agreed, and we can hardly see a thing. The goblin could be right behind us. Rachel rubbed her bare arms and shivered nervously. Only a couple of minutes had passed, but as the mist grew thicker, the forest began to feel dark and unfriendly. Nothing glittered or gleamed anymore. The fog was settling around the girls like a cold blanket. Shadowy figures moved up ahead. A man wearing a red t-shirt ran out in front of the girls as another runner burst out of the trees. They were heading straight for each other. Watch out! Called Kirsty, but it was too late. Crash! The runners bumped into each other. Sorry, didn't see you there, one of them said, rubbing his head. I've never seen fog like this in summer, replied the other one. Rachel and Kirsty could hear rustles and bumps all around them. Complaining voices echoed through the fog. Lots of runners were getting lost and having to walk in order to avoid the trees. What a shame. The fog is ruining the fun run, said Rachel. The fog still seemed to be getting thicker. It cloaked the trees in robes of dull grey, making them look dark and sinister. Suddenly, something caught Kirsty's eye. Over there, she pointed. A bright light was moving towards them, shining like a lantern. Soon the girls could see it was a tiny, gleaming fairy. Oh, gasped Kirsty. It's Evie the Mist Fairy. Hello again, Rachel and Kirsty, cried Evie in a bright, tinkly voice as she hovered in the air in front of them. The girls had met Evie in Fairyland along with all the other weather fairies. She had long dark hair and violet eyes. She wore a floaty lilac dress with purple boots, and her wand had a sparkly silver tip from which wisps of shimmering mist drifted constantly. Oh, we're so glad to see you, said Rachel delightedly. We really need your help, Kirsty added. We're sure that the goblin with the mist feather isn't far away. Yes, agreed Evie with a frown on her tiny face, and he's causing lots of misty mischief. Could you leave a magic trail behind us as we go further into the woods? Rachel asked. Then we can look for the goblin and still find our way back to the site and out. Evie grinned. She waved her wand and a fountain of fairy dust shot out. It floated to the ground and formed a glittering path. Of course, now we won't get lost, she said, but we might bump into the runners, Kirsty pointed out. Let's turn ourselves into fairies, Rachel, then we can fly. The Fairy Queen had given Rachel and Kirsty beautiful golden lockets full of fairy dust. The girls sprinkled themselves with magic dust and soon shrank to fairy size. The tree seemed as big as giant castles looming out of the thick fog. I love being a fairy, Kirsty sang out happily. Rachel twisted round to look over her shoulder. There were her fairy wings on her back, shiny and delicate. Hooray! Evie rose into the air, a trail of glittering mist streaming from her wand, and the two girls followed her deeper into the forest. Below them, the runners were still stumbling about in the fog. Poor Mum, she was really looking forward to today. That nasty goblin's spoiling everyone's fun, said Rachel crossly. Suddenly, Rachel spotted a dark, hunched shape in the mist below. She waved urgently to Kirsty and Evie. Look down there, she called softly. I think we found the goblin. Wrong chapter 3. Goblin in the fog. They all floated down to investigate. The mist was heavier here and sticky. It dragged at Rachel's wings as she flew through it. Oh, it's not a goblin, it's just a dead tree, she sighed, landing on the thick, twisted trunk. She felt disappointed. The dark, squat shape had looked just like a goblin from the air. This will be the last chapter I'm reading for this story. We may not have found him yet, Kirsty whispered to her friend, but I still think that the goblin's nearby. The mist here smells nasty and musty, and it's harder to fly through. Rachel fluttered her beautiful shiny wings. Yes, she agreed. It's like cold porridge. Just then, they heard a gruff, complaining voice. It's not fair. I'm cold, I'm lost, and I'm hungry. There was a loud sniff, like a pig snorting. Poor me. Rachel, Kirsty, and Evie looked at each other in excitement. That's definitely a goblin speaking, declared Evie. And also, thank you so much for my mum for speaking in my live stream. Thank you for commenting. Quick, let's hide in that tree before he sees us, suggested Rachel. They flew upwards to land on the branch of a huge oak and peered down through the thick green leaves. Sure enough, the goblin sat on a log below them. They could see the top of his head and his enormous bony feet. They could also hear a horrible gurgling sound like slimy stuff going down a plug hole. That does sound disgusting. Lost in this horrible forest, and I'm so hungry, moaned the goblin, clutching his rumbling tummy. I'd love some toadstool stew and some warm dumplings. Warm dumplings does actually sound delicious. Suddenly he jumped up. What's that? Who's there? He peered up in the tree branches. Rachel, Kirsty, and Evie quickly darted behind the oak leaves, and after a moment the goblin sank down onto his log again. Must have been a squirrel, he muttered. I want to go home. The girls could see the goblin clearly now. He had bulging crossed eyes and a big lumpy nose like a potato. That's actually funny. His arms were long and skinny, but he had short legs and knobbly knees. Look what he's holding, whispered Evie. Kirsty and Rachel peered through the leaves and saw that a beautiful silvery feather with a lilac tip was clutched in the goblin's stubby fingers. The mist feather, the girls exclaimed together. Then Rachel frowned. If the goblin's lost in the fog, why doesn't he use the magic feather to get rid of it? She asked. Because he doesn't know how, Evie explained. He's waving the feather about all over the place without thinking. But by doing so, he's only making more and more mist. It was true. The goblin was shaking the mist feather and mumbling to himself sorrowfully as thick swirls of fog drifted around him. Earwig, fritters, beetles, pancakes, lovely slug sandwiches, he muttered. Slug sandwiches sound disgusting. Just then, one of the runners passed close by. The goblin shot to his feet and hid behind a tree. He was trembling so much that the three friends could hear his knees knocking together. It's a pogwardle, he whispered in panic. As the sound of the runner's footsteps faded, the goblin peered up. The pogwardle's gone. He flopped back down on the log, but carried on looking about him nervously. Kirsty turned to Evie. What is a pogwardle? She asked. Evie smiled, her violet eyes sparkling. Pogwardles are strange magical goblin chasing monsters, she replied. Rachel looked at the fairy curiously. Where do they live? She and Kirsty had been to fairyland a few times now. They had seen elves, goblins, and all kinds of fairies, but never a pogwardle. Evie gave a peal of silvery laughter. Nowhere, she said, because they don't exist. You see, goblin children can be really naughty, so their mothers tell them that if they don't do as they are told, a Hogwarts will come and chase them. Kirsty and Rachel laughed so much that they nearly fell off the branch. That is actually kind of funny. Then Rachel suddenly turned to Kirsty and Evie in excitement. I've got an idea, she whispered, her eyes shining. I think I know how we can get the mist feather back. I have read 43 pages. Ha ha, Pogwarzoes, I love that word. Thank you so much for my mum saying that. The next chapter is called The Pogwarzo Plot. But I think I'm going to leave it at that because I read 3 full chapters. I hope you enjoyed me reading Evie the Mist Fairy, the 12th Rainbow Magic book, and the 5th Weather Fairies book. The next fairy I will be reading is Storm the Lightning Fairy. She's book number 13 and the 6th fairy in the Weather Fairy series. I'll go find her so you can see her clearly. That's her. Storm the Lightning Fairy. Sorry, the screen is really fuzzed out. But I hope that you guys enjoyed me reading Evie the Mist Fairy. Thank you, darling. Totally enjoyed that. You are so welcome. Just to say, every day now, I'm going to be reading 1 Rainbow Magic book. Well, at least hopefully, I'll probably next read on this channel in like 5 months. But I really hope I will read tomorrow.